pick up questions that help us cover most of the topics. Yeah, does that make sense? Well, any questions? Tell me, guys, do we have any particular term question that we want to particularly have a look at, or else we can uh, just look at a few questions. I remember we'd not practiced a particular question from modeling chapter, right? So I wanted to take up a question from there, right? So tell me, guys, any particular question? Cool. In that case, I'll pick up a few questions that I had in mind. Okay. Cool. So the first one is regarding alterations. Okay, so this is the last question that I can see, at least in my booklet, right? So this is April 21, question number 9. Okay, so let's start by looking at that particular question. April 21, question number 9. A life insurance company sells without profit term policies with, uh, oh, did we already do this question? I think we did this question, right? Anyways, did we already do this question? I remember us doing this question, right? We did question number 36, or did we not? Can you all remind me?
I don't think we've done this.
Oh,
Maybe for another booklet, we might have done another part,
oh
but
yeah,
not
yeah.
here.
True, 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 true,
Yes.
true. Cool. We did the same thing in booklet 3, the second part of the question, right? So
Yeah.
let's go to the question. I think the question is now familiar to us, right? So what we were given was a few ages, sum assureds in terms, and corresponding monthly premiums, right? So we got like what, the current age, the sum assured, the term, and the monthly premium, right? And they said that this is what the table that you have here is the current premium rate for calendar year 2021, right? And they were also saying that the premium rates in 2011 were 25% higher than those that are charged in 2021. There have been no changes to the company structure over this period, which would have impacted the premiums. Now, part two, I think we did, like, we wanted to outline reasons as to why this may be the case, right? That why the premiums are lower now, right? In part three, they are saying state the principles the company should follow for general alterations to term assurance policies, right? That's a pretty generic question, right? We just need to lay down what do you call the principles as such, right? So tell me, guys, what are your usual principles for general alterations? Like, if we also think about term policies here, right? So what would be your principles?
Alteration terms should be affordable,
Okay, should be affordable for the policyholder. What else?
and for the company as well, it should not lead to aggregate losses.
Right. So if it should not lead to aggregate losses, it must be backed by asset shares, right?
Right.
Sorry. So like, your terms of alteration should be such that they are backed by asset shares. Whatever is the asset share of the portfolio right before the alteration period, right? So that you don't make a loss. What else? You said that it should be affordable. So if it is something that involves an increase in benefit, right? Um, or increase in term, it should be affordable for the policyholders. What else?
It should be reasonable, as in small changes to the sum assured should lead in small changes to the premiums.
Perfect. Perfect. So what we have is small changes should lead to small changes. So it should be stable in nature, right? It should be um, like, it should be stable, it should be logical, it should be reasonable. Yeah. um, what else? It should be consistent with your pricing basis, right? So whatever is your new price, if you're selling a new product, for example, with a 50,000 sum assured, and if you are increasing the 50,000 sum assured for an existing policy, they should be comparable, right? If they are not comparable or they're not consistent, the policy holder will instead go and buy a new policy, right? What else?
So it should be consistent with the surrender values as well.
Exactly. It should be consistent with surrender value, and it should follow different limiting conditions, right? For example, any if you are reducing your premium, it should be a limiting case of making your policy a paid up policy, right? Or if you are reducing your term, it should be a limiting case of surrender. Yeah. What else? I think we already have 5 to 6 marks here, but a few points which are common in between surrender values and alterations, right? That it should be easy to calculate, explain, right? It should be easily documented such that the policyholder can understand it. And the other one being that any cost that you incurred at the point of surrender alteration, you should be able to recover it, right? And there was a third one which is also common, the one that says that um, any of these things, right? Surrenders and alterations should avoid lapse and re-entry on the part of the policyholder, right? So, like these are a few what do you call principles that will remain almost the same between surrender values and alterations, right? Points such as what? Points such as it should be backed by asset shares, right? So you don't make a loss, right? You should avoid lapse and re-entry, right? It should be fairly stable. It should be consistent with whatever your pricing strategy is. It should be easy to document, calculate, explain, right? Um, what else did we say? Any costs associated should be like charged for when doing that alteration or surrender, right? Limiting cases for alteration, right? That is a plus. We also talked about how it should be stable in the sense that small increases in benefit should lead to small changes in premium. There's one more point which talks about being equitable, right, to different groups of policyholders and to shareholders. For that, what do we do? What do we say? Like when do we be when are we equitable? How should the terms be structured such that we are equitable between different groups?
Cross subsidy should not exist.
Cross subsidy should not exist, or if I were to frame it in a better way, I would say that like you should not release all profit at the point of you should not distribute all profit to the policyholders at a point of surrender alteration, right? It should your profit expected from the contract should be uh, the same as it was before the alteration, right? Yes or no?
Mm. Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
So like that's what the wording that I've used in the material. So we'll try to stick to that, right? Uh, about how the profit of the contract, right? You should retain some part, and like that would depend on what? That would depend on the choice of assumptions that you make for your policy value before alteration and after alteration. Okay. Does that make sense, guys? Any questions there? Cool. Looking at the next part of the question, they say what in 2011 a policyholder then aged 30 purchased a term assurance with a sum assured of 100,000 in a term of 20 years. So it's basically what row? I think it's first row, right? 30 current age, uh, 20-year policy, 100,000 sum assured. So monthly premium was 6%. No, in 2021 it's 6%, but in 2011 it was 25% higher. So I could assume it was 7.5 back then, right? The policyholders recently requested revised premium rates for two different alterations to their policies. So they have asked for two different alterations. Now remember, in 2021, right? That's when they have requested, after 10 years, they've requested for a like alteration. At this point, the current pricing, right, says that the monthly premium is $6 for that product, right? For that product though, but this policyholder is paying $7.50, right? Although if they were to buy a new policy, go elsewhere and buy, they may have to provide go under further underwriting, right? Um, what does it?
Sorry, I'm just not able to understand. Aren't we looking at the second row? Because in 2011 the policyholder was 30. So
Mhm.
now you should be 40, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And
true, true, true. So if we talk about any alteration right now, for quoting the alteration terms, we'll use age 40. But if we think about the original contract, it was sold according to row one, right?
okay.
So right now the policyholder would be paying $7.50, right? Six into 25% higher.
Okay, got
Yeah.
it.
So if I were to quote any alteration terms right now, according to the current pricing structure, I would look at current age 40, right? And if because I don't think this is a guaranteed product, I would probably ask them to undergo future underwriting as well if they want to increase their sum assured beyond a certain limit. Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense.
So, what are the two alterations that they've requested uh, for which they have requested premium rates? Option A, extending term a further 10 years to 30 years with a sum assured remaining 100,000. The policy company has quoted a revised total premium of 16 per month for this alteration, increasing sum assured by 100,000 to 200,000 with the term unchanged. The company has quoted a revised total premium of $12 per month for this alteration. So if I look at option B, it is equivalent to buying another 100,000 term assurance policy for 10 years for an age 40 guy. Yes or no? Tell me, guys. Do you all agree? Yes or no? Because they already have 100,000 worth of cover. So I'm talking about option B right now. So option B is basically equivalent to buying another 10,000, 100,000 cover policy that gives a cover for 10 years for someone aged 40. Yes or
So
no?
row two basically, right?
Sorry.
Second row.
Right. If I were to talk about what do you call an added addition to an existing cover, right? But if I were to talk about it independently, I would look at row four, right? I could also think
Right.
about in independence is just something that was $14, right? Or you can think of it as $9 plus $7.5. Yes, because like we discussed, the earlier premium that they were paying was the existing premium that they paying was $7.5 to $9 plus $7.5. So you can either think of it as like a $14 thing or a $16.5 thing. Yes.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what do you think? Our altered premium should have been lower than that or higher than that?
So just to clarify, when we're
Hmm.
talking about alteration here, will the policy holder be subject to further underwriting?
Again, they have not very clearly mentioned whether they will be subject to further underwriting or not. But here I can assume that they may be, they may not. Like again, it's very difficult to assume that whether they will
So
be.
maybe we can write two types of answers based
Yeah,
on
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. You
Okay.
can, right? So, uh, right. So you can think of a scenario where there is a further underwriting because of which, say, poor health leading to a rise in premium or something like that, or underwriting did take place, but or even like but the point is that they have not talked about any guarantee, right? And usually when there is no guarantee in the product, there is a further underwriting, especially when you are doubling your sum assured, right? If it's a as
Mhm.
simple as just adding 10% to your existing premium, or if there's a defined scenario, for example, every fifth anniversary you get some option to increase your sum assured, or it is some life event, uh, you get to increase your sum assured, but there's no guarantee like that. So I would assume there would be some further underwriting. Okay. So let's discuss option B. So we said like we can think of it like two policies, right? We can think of it like a policy about that is there in row four, which will have a monthly premium of $14. Another one was we can think of it like a policy which is in addition to the existing policy, right? So it would be $7.5. How did I get $7.5? 6 into 1.25 plus row 2, which is 100,000 for another 10 years for someone aged 10. That is another $9. So that brings you up to $16.5, right? Now, at this point, what would you expect? Would you expect your um, altered premium to be lower than that or higher than that? Any thoughts? Your alteration premium, that whatever is quoted, what do you expect it to be? Something less than that or greater than that?
As a policyholder, I'll not expect it to be higher because I can then go and buy the policy directly instead of
Exactly.
altering.
Exactly. So, which means what? It means that that like right now we have said that the altered premium is $12. So this seems appropriate, right? Given that the policyholder's health has not worsened and that is the result of further underwriting, right? This is appropriate because why? The first one of the principles that is being met, as you said, is it avoids lapse and re-entry, right? Uh, and at the same instance, the thing is that whenever you're selling a new policy, there are a lot of initial costs you incur, right? So you won't be incurring all those initial costs now, right? So that is an advantage for you, and you provide that benefit to the policyholder at the point of alteration. Is that comment clear to everyone for the second option, guys? Yes or no?
So when we talk about the principle which says
Hmm.
that alteration terms should be fair for policyholders who alter as well as policyholders who buy a new policy, so then we can enter this argument that even if the new policy has a higher premium, it is still fair because there are initial expenses involved,
Yes,
which is
yes,
not the
yes,
case here. Okay.
exactly. Yep. The initial expenses involved, your costs related to that policy, there'll be selling costs involved, initial commissions will be there, right? Uh,
Mm-hmm. Okay.
which, right? There's an additional strain on your data systems and everything, much more than what is there in all alterations. This is at the end of the day an existing policy on your books. So usually it's easier to provide an alteration than to sell a new policy, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
So here, did we make comparison with both the premiums, like the fourth row, which is 14 monthly premium, and the
Yep.
other 7.5 plus 9?
Yes, that's what we'll do. We'll try to think of alternate ways as to how we can express this new option.
Okay. And what was the logic that we used for the 14 one?
The 14 one was like, if you think about it, now this policy holder is aged 40,
Yeah.
right? Has 10 years left,
Hmm.
and the sum assured is 200,000.
Right.
So that's fourth row,
Hmm.
right? And the monthly premium is 14.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And by alteration, they are getting like they
12.
have to pay 12. So
Yes.
altering the policy would be better. Okay. So,
Which makes sense, or else the policyholder would have done what? They would have surrendered simply and bought the new contract,
right.
right? Which is most more costly for you. You would incur surrender charges, you would incur initial cost when selling the new policy, right? A whole lot of initial costs, high initial commissions, and everything else, right? So it's better to just provide that on a lower premium for the altered policy, given that given that this table is for standard premium rate and underwriting results were not worse than the standard premium.
Got it.
Okay. Let's talk about option A, slightly trickier. They're saying that extending the term a further 10 years to 30 years with a total sum assured remaining at 100,000. The company has quoted a revised total premium of $16 per month for this alteration. Now, think about it. Right now, the existing policy holder is 40 years old. Now they want what? They want the policy to last for how many more years?
20 more years. So
Extending the
third
term
row.
of further 10. Exactly. So the third row is one of those options, right? Yes or no? Let me guess. So if I were to talk about a standalone policy like we did for option B as well, like we did for row 4 with option B, I can think of row 3 here because the sum assured stays at 100,000, and you can think of it something that has 20 years of outstanding term. So that's uh, a monthly premium of $14, right? But our premium right now that we are charging is what? We are charging $16, right? So what can you comment here?
I want to ask one thing similar to
Mhm.
the two cases that we did for option
Yeah,
B.
we'll do the second thing here as well.
Okay.
Yeah, just talking about the conclusion here. What would you conclude here? What would you comment here? Because it's higher, right? So if it's higher, what do you say? It may encourage lapse and re-entry. However, it may be possible that because you would have asked for further underwriting, it could have revealed a poor health condition, and the given premium rates are for standard lives, and you may have added a substandard loading to reflect for the poor health condition. Make sense?
Mm. Okay.
Yes or no? Cool. Now, if we talk about something that supplements an existing policy, what is the existing policy? An existing policy is one where you are doing 100,000 for 10 years, right? Can I think of it 100,000 for someone aged 40 for 10 years plus and 100,000 for another 10 years for someone aged 50? Yes or no, guys?
Mm.
Right? Correct? Agreed? So for the first 10 years, they would be paying what? They would be paying $7.5 because that's what they are paying for the existing like existing product, right? And for the new addition, they would pay $13 for the next 10 years. So the first 10 years, they'd pay $7.5 per month. For the next 10 years, they'd pay $13 per month. Yes or no?
I did not get this. How did we get 50? Because the policy holder was 30 when the policy started, right? So
Okay.
after 10 years, he should be 40.
Right now, he's 40, right? But I want this now, I want the policy to go on for another 20 years.
Yeah,
Yeah. So it needs to go from 40 to 60.
right. So shouldn't we look at row 3 then?
Yeah, yeah. We'll come to that. We'll come to that. So we have already looked at row three. We have closed that. Like if we
Mm.
compare it with a new policy, that's row three. Fine. But what is the existing policy? The existing policy covers 100,000 for ages 40 to 50. Yes or no? The existing policy that the policyholder already has, right? Because he bought it as a 20-year policy at age 30. So it already provides cover for another 10 years from 40 to 50. Correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and for that, he's paying how much? $7.5 per month, correct?
But he's paying $7.5 for 20 years, right? Not for 30 to 40.
But now 10 years have already elapsed, right? Now we are standing at 2021.
Yeah.
So, if he continues with this policy, he needs to pay $7.5 for another 10 years to get cover up to age 50 for 100,000 sum assured.
Okay, that makes sense. We
Yeah,
have less premiums then, right?
exactly. So,
Okay.
if I were to extend this cover for another 10 years, I would have to think from the point of view of someone who's aged 50 and wants to buy a 10-year term policy at 100,000 sum assured, correct? Yes or no? So I'm already standing at age 40. I already have cover for another 10 years, right? For which I am paying $7.5 a month, right? The cover is for 100,000 sum assured. I want this cover to go up till age 60, however, right? So if I were to think about in a very objective manner, right, I could think that the premium should somehow take also into consideration that what someone aged 50 would pay for a 10-year policy, right? And they have given that someone aged 50 for a 10-year policy would pay $13 per month, right? So I can combine these two things together, right? Someone aged 40, if they want a 20-year policy, they'd have to pay $7.5 for the first 10 months and $13 for the next 10 months to get the 20-year term policy. Yes or no? Tell me, guys, does this make sense to everyone? Any questions, sir? Again, you will see that your proposed altered premium is higher than both of them, right? It's higher than the first leg premium than the second leg premium, right? Which again encourages just what it encourages lapse and re-entry. However, you may write the point here that similar to what we did for for a new policy term, you can write that the policy may have been underwritten and poor health would have led to a higher premium rate.
For this second situation, if we
Hmm.
compare, we are paying 13 plus 7.5, which is
No, we are not
20.5.
paying. We are not paying 13 for the first 10 years, right? We are paying 13 only for the next 10
Okay,
years.
yes. So 13 will be compared with 16.
16, and so will
Okay, okay,
7.5.
okay. Yes.
Yeah. Makes sense to everyone. Any questions here? Mansi, is it clear now to you?
Yeah, I did not get how we are just comparing 13, not 13 plus 7.5.
Okay. So I am 40 years old today, right? I already have cover for another 10 years at 7.5 per dollar,
Right.
right? If I after 10 years I'll reach age 50, right?
Hmm.
At age 50 I would want a policy for another 10 years, right? What will I pay at that point of time?
13.
13. So will I for 10 years, for the first 10 years, how much have I paid? $7.5 a month.
Right.
For the next 10 years I'll pay $13 a month,
Yes.
right? In the alter term, it's $16 a month for the entire 20 years,
Yeah.
right? So one premium schedule is $7.5 a month for the first 10 years, $13 a month for the next 10 years. The other premium schedule is $16 a month for the entire 20-year period,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
So that's why now does it make sense? Why am I comparing 16 with 13 and 16 with 17.5?
Okay. Got it.
Yeah, and not with the addition of two.
Right.
Okay. Any questions, guys? Does this make sense? Cool. Perfect. So cool, cool. Let's look at this one. Question number 32. The one, the couple of questions before this, right? So this talks about different profit criteria. Yeah. A life insurance company measures its profit criteria. This is September 20, question number 6. Measures its profit criteria using the following measures: NPV, IRR, and DPP. NPV expressed as a percentage of the PV of the expected premiums payable and discounted using a rate relevant to the riskiness of the product. So, just like we have studied in our text, then they've said the company is deciding which of the two products, A and B, to launch and has calculated profit criteria for both products. The result of these products calculations are shown below in the table. Product A has a lower NPV, 1 versus 2.5. Um, okay, and this is expressed as a percentage of PV of premium. Cool. Um, IRR does not exist for product A, which may be possible, as we know. Product B has 20% IRR. DPP for the first product is 0, which makes sense because it did not have IRR, right? Which means you always have positive cash flows maybe in that particular product, right? Like you've got capital payback on the very first day, something of that sort, right? A product B has a DPP of 6 years, which is justified because of the higher net present value it has. Um and that's the only thing we can compare really. Uh, okay, they have they said anything about the insurance company, whether it's new in the market or something like that? No, they've not given any other information. They've just said that while calculating NPV or keeping in mind the relevant riskiness of the product, right? So the higher NPV of 2.5% for product B would have taken care of if any higher riskiness inbuilt in product B. Yeah. Now they're saying what discuss advantages and disadvantages of launching either product A or B based on the above information. Tell me, how would you analyze this? Let's pick up one profit criterion each. Like if you were to look at NPV, which would you choose? Tell me, guys, what would you choose based on NPV? So we'll choose product B, right? It has a higher net present value. Now it's a 5 marker, right? Uh, so what you need to do is need to write about all the advantages and disadvantages that you know about NPV. So what are the basic advantages that we know about NPV? Tell me, guys. So one of the advantages is what we discussed right now, that it we are using for calculating risk discount. Sorry, NPV. We are using a discount rate that is appropriate according to the riskiness of the two products, right? So it takes into account the inbuilt riskiness in the two products. So a higher NPV is adjusted for the higher risk return you may need, right? So that's why it's something that will help you do what? Help you maximize the present value of profits, right? Maximize return to the shareholders. Uh, if it's a proprietary company, and as such, you would prefer product B, right? That's one of the key advantages of NPV. And what else? It considers all the cash flows in that particular product, right? Unlike other measures, and it's always you can always calculate that, right? Um, what are your disadvantages? What was the one disadvantage that we've always talked about for NPV?
Law of diminishing
Law of
returns.
diminishing returns. So you cannot sell unlimited number of policies, right? Infinite policies at the same cost, right? So your profit that you make with every new policy sold will go down. But we have adjusted for that to some extent by dividing it by the PV of premiums and then comparing it, right? Because PV of premiums represent what? Your sales effort, right? How much will you occupy the what do you call market share for that product, right? Like to gain that much value, right? So you have adjusted that to an extent and hence taken care of the disadvantage. What else? IRR does not exist and 20%, right?
So when we talk about NPV not taking
Mhm,
into account of competitive pressures or competition, we can
mhm.
again add this point that since we are comparing with percentage of present value,
Yeah,
so
so it yes, yes.
okay.
So it takes that into helps to take that into account. Yeah, internal rate of return. Product B has a really high internal rate of return, right? Uh, Sorry, product B has high rate of return. What about product A? Like we said, if your IRR does not exist from the very beginning, it usually means you have positive cash flows from the very beginning, right? For IRR to exist, your cash flow sign must change once during the entire cash flow stream, right? Um, and because IR does not exist, it makes it attractive, right? Because you are profitable right from the outset. However, again, it is something that you cannot compare, right? Like, and hence may not be a benchmark for comparison. And that's one of the disadvantages of your IRR, right? DPP, product A zero, product B needs it takes a long period of time to uh, recoup your initial capital strain, right? So it depends on whether the company is strained for capital, what is the uh, like solvency health of the company, and depending on that, DPP would make it would make sense to use DPP or not, right? So that's the advantage of DPP, that it helps to understand when is capital paid back, right? But a disadvantage of DPP is like in this case in product A, we don't know like what's the profitability status after the first year, right? After time zero, in fact, right? Because we are not looking at cash flows to after that point of time and take into consideration cash flows after that point of time. Make sense, guys? Yes or no? Any questions? Cool. Um, Perfect. In that case, uh, let's look at one of the questions for um, for modeling. Yeah. So this is question number. Just a second. I marked a particular question and just quickly look for it. Give me a moment. Just a second, guys. I think I'm not able to find that particular question. Mm. Just a second. Okay, here's the one. So we're looking at question number 27, right? A few of the parts here are quite theoretical. So we'll try to like breeze through those parts. There are a few parts which are application based too as well. So the first part states that state the key uses of models in life insurance. So what are the reasons we use in actuarial models, guys? So we may use it for what? We may use it for performing valuations. We may use it for doing what? For what? Calculating solvency position, right? We may use it for calculating like pricing your products, right? Pricing to understand what is the profit criteria and return on capital, right? We've talked about solvency, we've talked about valuations to meet regulatory reserving requirements, to calculate reserves, right? To calculate solvency positions. Um, what else? Tell me. It's a two marker. We've already talked about three, 4 points. A couple of more points, maybe. Bonus distribution. It helps you set your bonus distribution strategy. So can I say it also helps you project pricing options and guarantees investments? Perfect. That sums it up. Then the next one, they say life insurance company that writes without profits life insurance business uses a cash flow projection model for pricing and determining its reserves. Perfect. List the key requirement and features of a cash flow model. So if you remember, this is what there were a list of pointers right at the beginning, right? In this modeling chapter. So that's what we need to talk about. For example, like output should be easy to validate, easy to understand, right? Well documented, easy to communicate the results, right? Interaction between variables. Uh, you should be able to like what? It should be easy to run, not use. It should be flexible, right? It should be easy to enhance the model if any enhancement needs to be made, right? There should be a possibility of like I think I've already said it, but interaction between elements, stochastic, deterministic, you can bring that those elements, right? It should be able to take in all the features of your in like existing products, right? All the decrements should there should be inputs for different decrements, right? um, what else? I think that's about what you expect from your model, right? I think there were a few more points there, so we can just avoid, yeah, not taking too long time, avoiding serious accuracy. So we can just list all those points here. Now, next part is interesting. Outline how the model points used for pricing will differ for than those used for reserving. Tell me. So we all know that pricing takes place based on model points, right? Because you don't have actual data at that point of time. So how do you construct those model points? It's based on what, guys? It's based on, tell me, like what will you think expected new business, right? So you think about what is the expected profile of the new business, right? And you would create model points based on that, right? So you will have expected split of expected new business mix, right? As to like what mix your policy holders would represent. You can classify it according to risk characteristics, different risk characteristics such as gender, smoker status, right? You can base it upon any similar business that you have already sold in the past, and then like modify it according to any changes that you expect in the future, right? uh, so that you can also talk to your distribution channels at this point of time to understand what is your expected new business mix, create your model points accordingly, and use that in pricing. On the other hand, when you're doing reserving, you already have actual data in your hands, right? So you'll use that actual data, and if you want to create model points, right, you will create model points that represent that actual data that you all actual policy data that you already have, right? Again, you would try to group the data based on a few characteristics. You'd create homogeneous groups depending on the volume of data you have, right? But the key difference is pricing is based on expected mix of new business, and reserving is based on actual data, actual policy data that you have, because you have actually sold those policies. Yeah. The next part says what auditors have asked the company to demonstrate that the model is allowing for future cash flows accurately and completely. For a four marker, they are asking you to explain why the company would have been asked to do this. You don't need to comment on the assumptions or model points. So we're not talking about, so whenever you're talking about any modeling related question, remember that three main things, okay? There's modeling methodology, right? There's what there's data, there's assumptions. So they've said that you don't need to talk about data and assumptions right at this point. You may talk about modeling methodology, and you may talk about everything else that exists in and around an insurance company, right? So why do you think audit would be carried out? Tell me, guys. Usually, if you think about it, audit is most probably, most often than not, a regulatory requirement, right? That your models need to be thoroughly accurate, audited at a periodic interval. So as such, uh, uh, the regulatory audit may be carried out. What else? Tell me, guys. Anything else? Why would you want to carry out an audit of your model specifically? Like what what I think at times is for questions like these, right? You don't have a lot of points for these in your text directly, right? So what really helps is try to imagine the shoes of, say, in this case, as the head of a modeling team, right? The auditors have come up and said to you that they want to review your models, right? The first thing that you would ask them is, why do you need to do it in the first place, right? Or it may be requested by you. It might be initiated by you that you want to carry out some kind of internal audit for yourself, right? Or there may have been something that would have triggered this audit, right? So you need to think of what are those triggers, right? So just put yourself in the shoes of, say, a modeling actuary, right? Think about what would have happened such that an audit has been triggered on your models. Anyone? Tell me, guys.
Introduction of new product features, I mean, new products.
Yep, yep. So there's, like, for example, you would have brought some changes to your products, right? You have carried out some changes to your models as to how assumptions are used, as to how product features are used, as to how different things interact with each other, right? About like key, say, formula changes or key developments, enhancements that would have been made uh, during the past few months or so, and because of which you want to carry out an independent audit whether those functionalities are working fine, right? Working, those new features, product features have been reflected well in your model, right? What else, guys? Error in last valuations, right? So that triggers a audit most of the times, right? uh, when the audit was carried out last time, there was a error spotted in your model, right? So if there's an error spotted or there has been a big change, right, then it is usually upon the auditor, the onus falls on the auditor to come and look at those models closely. Okay. What else? It may be an internal requirement again, right? uh, that you need to like, the models are the base for everything ahead, right? They help you understand your reserves correctly, they help you set your solvency capital, they help you uh, make sure that you are pricing appropriately for your products, right? So the risk of not being able to these things is quite high, right? So you want a like an independent check to be performed on these uh, actions, for example, right? There may be a lot of volatility that you may have noticed in the recent past as to how some assumptions have behaved in the model. Yeah, fine. And as such, that has triggered uh, like an audit. Okay. Let's look at the next part. Next part says what? In order to demonstrate the validity of the model, the company has decided to build an independent cash flow projection model. That's what is usually done, right? So, for example, like what is used in the market today, you will see things like Profit, Access, RAFM, right? Nowadays, people are using Pathwise, right? So you'll have different independent actuarial models, right? Now, if I want to verify if my models is doing right, I'd pick up a Excel spreadsheet and put my data, put my assumptions, try to calculate it from first principles, right? And then try to validate what the model, like, I'll try to cross check what the model output is giving me and what I have calculated from first principles, right? With the aim of replicating the live model. And then I'll try to see how the Excel spreadsheet is different from the assumptions or modeling methodology that the, say, vendor defined model uses, right? And that's what will help me to explain the live model or validate the live model. Now they're saying what outline the information needed to build an independent model. Just try to think you're using, for example, a third party or an internally developed model. You want to replicate that on an Excel sheet, right? So all cash flow projections, discounting them, calculating PVs or solvency capital or profitability criteria and everything, right? We're trying to replicate all of that, all product features, everything. So what are the kind of informations you need? Everything, right? For example, you need details of all cash flows. So that becomes what? All the product features in your product, right? Including what are the cash flows, what are the benefits that are payable, right? What are the expenses associated with the product, what are the charges you are imposing, what are like any what are guarantees, options, any reinsurance arrangements in place, right? What else? Any like any third party services for expenses, right? What are the reserving assumptions, right? What are the best estimate assumptions? What are any other embedded value or solvency assumptions that may be used in the model? What are the data fields? What how to interpret those data fields? Are there any existing documentation available on that? Correct. How do you interpret the what do you call model output such that it is comparable with your calculated results, right? uh, what else, guys? Anything else? All your assumptions correct, all your assumptions, investment returns, inflation, mortality rate, right? So you need all of that. You need other modeling methodology things, right? For example, what are your reserving methods, right? It may be GPV, NPV, UPR, whatever it may be. Whether any other reserving methodology such as flooring of reserves is being practiced, right? Like what are your uh, what do you say, like timing of cash flow assumptions, right? Middle of the month, like what is your projection frequency, monthly, annual, right? uh, what are your decrement assumptions? For example, you may use a UDD or a CFM assumption. So those are things related to modeling methodologies, right? So you have assumptions, data, modeling methodology, and what are the inputs, what are the other inputs such as product features, right? So you need to talk about all those headers. Make sense? Any questions? Finally, we are talking about what are the other factors the company should consider before the model is built. Anyways, you're building an Excel model now. That's what you're doing, right? Uh, what would you think, right? Firstly, you'd think what is the sort of resources, time, exactly cost and time that you'd want to spend on it, right? So for that, you'd think what is the purpose of this model, right? What is the level of accuracy that you want from this model? How closely do you want this to like validate your existing model output? So you define a level of tolerance, for example, then decide what is the kind of uh, like uh, like time resources that you want to spend in the model, right? You may want to also have a look at the benefits that you're getting out of this model, right? You may want to build this model such that it remains something that can be reused in the future as well, right? To perform similar checks, to perform similar validations, right? You may want to consider what are, if you're say building it for just one product, what are the different products it can be built for, whether it would be useful to just generalize it for all the other cases. Yeah. uh, like you may want to like consider things like whether you want to limit it to, for example, if there are a few products that cover 95% of your business, you may only build a model for them, right? You may not spend time for building a model for the rest 5% of the difference, right? Because if your results are validated for the 95% of the business, it it does not make sense to spend more time validating the other 5%, right? um, what else, guys? You would what are the other factors? Resources available, whether you need to hire them. Oh, fair enough. What else? Tell me. Like it should be adequately documented, right? There should be a, like, because it's a new project, your project management things, right? There should be uh, checks, internal checks and systems built in place to make sure that we are continually monitoring our like progress against our timelines, right? uh, what else? Whether there are any uh, existing resources that can already be used in terms of existing models that have been built. So you may answer on those lines.
Will talking about competition be relevant here, like seeing what competitors are doing?
I don't think so, because
Okay.
this is very internal, right?
Mm.
What you may write here though is what the auditor's requirements are, right?
Okay.
Because
Okay.
you're doing this mostly as an audit requirement, right?
Mm.
Yeah, so
Okay.
you may talk about what is an audit requirement. Is this a one-off requirement or a regular requirement, right? If usually what happens, it may be a one-off audit requirement, a special audit requirement, or it may be something that is said to you that they would review it on, say, a quarterly or an annual basis. So if they want to review it on an annual basis, you would want to maintain it in a way that it can be reused again and again, right? So it's usually um, linked to how auditors want this to be reviewed, right? And auditors do have a lot of intervention when it comes to actuarial models. I can say that from my own past experience that they would ask the most basic things, and they would want everything to be uh, like vetted from the first principles point of view as to how things should be actually set up and how they have been set up in the model. Okay,
Okay.
cool. Um, Perfect. What else? I think we've covered a fair bit from this booklet. We are left with practicing a few questions from the fifth booklet, which I wanted a bit to be covered today as well. Um, like the key chapters that you cover here is what? Like, let's, instead of covering questions, let's quickly talk on a very high level. What are the chapters here, right? So we have reinsurance, we have underwriting, and we have investments, right? Um, as far as investments are concerned, it's quite simple. You have like mostly 3 to 4 kinds of questions that come in here. The first one is where they ask you to define the principles of investment, right? Then the other one is where they'll ask you how do you develop an investment strategy. So you have the entire thing of sorry, like a matching strategy, like by nature, currency, and liabilities, right? So you talk about different sorts of benefits, right? It can be guaranteed, it can be guaranteed in money terms, it can be guaranteed with respect to an index, it can be discretionary, it can be then linked to an underlying pool of assets, right? According to that, you have different asset classes that you recommend, right? You look at the sort of product, you also understand that you need to hold some cash assets, right? When developing an investment strategy, you also need to think about uh, like if it's related to some sort of an option or guarantee. uh, you also might use some sort of a stochastic model, right? uh, in fact, even for interest rates, there may be alternative options, right? You may use different kinds of you may use a stochastic model to choose between investment strategy depending on what gives you a higher rate of return in the long run, or by having a target solvency ratio based on a like defined time period, right? So those are the main two types of questions that you'd get from investments. And then they will ask you like they'll give you cases, scenarios as to, for example, someone selling some sort of a policy, they are holding these types of assets. This says the amount of free surplus or anything, something is free, like your reserves are backed by this, your free surplus is backed by these assets. And then they ask you to justify their uh, like investments, right? It's similar to making an investment strategy, but now they've given you what the investment strategy has been. Now you have to either justify that and one of those question parts, and then maybe recommend any changes that you think from your end, right? So the idea remains the same. You need to think of what are the different liabilities, how do you break down in terms of nature, currency, and liabilities, what are those assets, whether you have matched them or not. If you have matched them, what was your logic behind that? If you have not matched them, what was the logic behind that, right? Usually matching means that um, you may be allowed to hold, like you may be allowed to use a what you call a liquidity premium, right? But at the same time you're earning slightly lower rate of return uh, because you may have a lower free capital position, or it may be a regulatory requirement, maybe your own risk profile. All those things come into the play, right? The second one, if you've mismatched, usually it means you want to earn a higher rate of return, right? uh, and like you have that investment freedom because you have greater investment, greater free surplus, right? So that's the sort of questions you get for investments, right? Then you have got reinsurances. Reinsurance is usually again one of those places where you'll get the straightforward questions such as why do you want to opt for reinsurance in the first place, right? So again, straight from the text, reasons why an insurance company buys out insurance, reinsurance, right? Uh, then you've got things like risks because of reinsurance. What are the various due diligences that you need to follow? You'll get questions like that again from this text, right? Then you will have like whether you'll review someone's reinsurance strategy, risk mitigation strategies, then advise them as to how they can improve it, right? So you have to look at what is the nature of business, what are the nature of risk. For example, if they have concentration risk, if they have risk where like the sum assureds are really high, claims are really volatile, if they are constrained for capital, what are the different kinds of reinsurances you can buy for each scenario, right? For example, excess of loss or surplus treaties, right? Or risk premium coupled with financial reinsurance to meet a financial strain, right? The third type of questions that you get for reinsurance is where they talk about what's the optimum level of reinsurance, right? How to decide on a retention limit. Again, we have mortality fluctuation reserves here, right? And we have a cost of reinsurance because of the credit risk, counterparty risk that gets introduced. So you want to minimize the sum of two, right? And again, you can use a stochastic model to be able to make your choice here, right? So that was investment and reinsurances. Finally, you've got questions around underwriting. Now, when it comes to underwriting, these people are getting innovative these days, bringing in IT, big data, um, like a lot of Fitbits and all these smartwatches, things to try to ask you questions around what are the different ways in which you can perform underwriting, like especially health underwriting, right? And underwriting actually on a continuous basis, right? They'll talk a lot about how your underwriting systems will change and its relation with reinsurance, right? And different types of reinsurance for that matter, right? And they also talk about financial reinsurance and financial underwriting and claims underwriting, right? So it's not just health underwriting that we need to keep in mind about. We also need to talk about uh, financial underwriting and claim underwriting. And again, the association of all these things with not just reinsurance, but your pricing as well, right? So pricing and underwriting often, not often, but always need to go hand in hand, right? You need to effectively assess the risk at that point of sale and appropriately then charge premiums for it, right? So those are the like high level sort of questions that you can expect from these few chapters. Any initial thoughts, guys? Any doubts? Any specific type of questions where you've got doubts?
I was practicing a mock today. I think it was
Hmm.
April 24th, and there was a
Hmm.
question regarding investment strategy. So it was
Okay.
they have a unit-linked product which
Hmm.
they've been selling for several number of years, and then they've
Hmm.
introduced a decreasing term assurance product which is 3 years old.
And it's without
And
profit, right?
yes, and they mainly invest in equity and property and do not invest in FIBs or cash. They invest in
Hmm.
equity, property, and ILBs. So you have to comment on the appropriateness of the strategy. So I think I scored very poorly, honestly, on that
Hmm.
because initially I did not write this basic theory because I thought that they are asking about the appropriateness, not about the theory that NTUC part, nature, term, uncertainty, and currency should be
Right.
matched, etc.
Right.
So I lost out on marks there. And
Hmm.
then I talked about how they want to increase their returns, and
Hmm.
that is why they are investing in equity and property and not in FIBs
Right.
because the product is only 3 years old, so they may not want to. I wrote that they may not know, since this is a new product, they may not know the
Hmm.
importance of investing in FIBs because benefits can be, they might need to pay benefits very soon. But
Right.
the
Yep.
question did not have these points in the examiner's report. They
Hmm.
talked about how the company will not company will not hold cash or FIBs because they will not reserve a lot for decreasing term assurance
Yeah. So
policies. And
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
So that's what you need to remember about term assurances, right? Like term assurances, a blanket rule for term assurances is that reserves held are lower,
Mm.
right? So investment does not matter a lot,
Right. Okay.
right?
Mm.
Investment matters where you've got something that has a good buildup of reserves, things like endowments, right? Uh, Things like
Right.
pensions, things like annuities, right? That's where your reserves matter a lot, right? Things like term, your and especially decreasing term, right? Where your sum assured is even going down with time, right? Your reserves are quite low, right? And as such,
Okay.
your reserves, like your investment returns as an assumption, are not an important assumption. Yeah. So it does not matter what you're earning on that, right? It's more like a pay as you go product. Like, uh,
Mm.
yeah. So uh, it again, like for term, just keeping that in mind. The second thing, for like whenever analyzing any appropriateness or writing about an investment strategy, the first thing, keep in mind, try to break down the nature, term, currency of liabilities, right? That itself will fetch you say 5 to 6 marks, right? Nature, term, currency,
Okay.
and
Mm.
appropriate assets to match that, right? If a matching strategy wants to be, you need want to follow that, right? And then mismatch, then bring in the current strategy, reasons to justify that, right? For
Mm.
example, in this case, if you're talking about equity and property backing a unit linked product, it makes good sense, right? It would be directly matching the underlying fund, right? And
Mm.
an underlying fund that takes appropriate amount of risk wants to maximize the rate of returns to the consumers, right? Now, you may also want to talk, I don't know whether the question said that or not, but whether equity and properties used to back free assets as well, right? And if that is the case, that again makes sense because uh, you have investment freedom, right? Your unit
I think
liabilities
it
are
was mentioned that they have high level of free assets,
mm,
but not where they are investing it.
okay. So you may assume it's equity and property again, right? Uh,
Mm.
right. At the end, you may say the company may want to, like, whether they mentioned about cash or not, I don't know. But uh, again, having some sort of, like, usually they have half a mark or a mark for these investment questions for just mentioning that you should keep an appropriate amount of cash to meet your regular
No, so the
expenses.
question was that
Yeah.
they're not holding any cash or any
Yeah. Then
investment in FIBs.
yeah, then you may need to write that you need to hold some appropriate amount of cash to meet daily expenses, to meet operational expenses, to meet like any
Okay. So
greater
I
than
think for
expected
this,
payouts.
they had written that since you are
Mm.
investing in equities and it's a highly liquid investment,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
that can be used to meet daily
yeah.
requirements,
Now that
something
is
like that.
justification for it. Yeah. So
Hmm.
you can provide justification for it, but you may provide an opposite point as well, right? So you've got
Okay, so since this point that you just said, or
mm,
the point that I mentioned, since these are not written in the examiner's report, so do we
you
get
usually
marks
get
for the pointers?
you get credit for it.
Okay. So
Yeah,
if it is
if again,
relevant, we get
yeah,
marks, right?
yeah, if it is relevant and if there's some place somewhere written in some examiner report. So usually the people who check these papers are who they're qualified actuaries, and they are people who
Mm.
are checking paper for say the last 5, 6, 7 years, right? Now these people
Mm.
know these reports in and out, right? They sit along with the reports, but the reports of the current term, right? The model solutions of the current term, but the model solutions are prepared by looking at answers, existing answers, right? A few sample question papers, and again, by more thoughts by existing actuaries, right? So, and these actuaries have looked at a last, like previous examiners reports, right? So if and this is a recurring point in past examiners report, right? So just keep in mind one of
Mm.
those things that where, for example, you're reading a question and answer for April 24, right? You've got a similar question in previous years as well, right? And you've got
Mm.
some other point mentioned in those papers, right? So if you bring in
Okay.
that point here, you may
Mm.
get the credit for it.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. So there's one thing that I often talk about when it especially comes to SP and SA papers, that the one who's checking the paper, they are judging whether you're fit to be an actuary, right? And for that, the knowledge content, that's fine. They want to understand, they want to know that you're thinking like an actuary. So your thought process matters a lot while you're writing those questions, right? So structuring those questions in a manner such that your thought process is coming across as logical, your thought process is coming across as like something that how an actuary would think like, right? You need to look at the
Mm.
bigger picture view most of the
Mm.
times, right? And draw logical deductions at every point, right? So that is something that's really needed in these SP and SA papers.
Okay. So, actually, I was practicing mocks, and I think there are
Hmm.
two situations I'm landing up. So,
Hmm.
at one point, I'm getting short of time. The last
Hmm.
question I'm missing out, so maybe 15-20 minutes short of time. So
Hmm.
these are the questions, question papers where the questions are fairly simple and you can write a lot.
Yeah,
So I'm
yeah.
not able to identify where to particularly stop so
Hmm.
that I can finish off on time.
Right, right,
Whereas on the other hand, I have these papers where, as we discussed today, some questions where you are not able to generate points at all.
right.
So I'll be able to finish my paper 20 minutes before only, but then I'll not
Hmm.
score nicely because I've not written a lot of points. So any tips
Right.
and tricks on how to handle this?
So I would always say the first scenario is a better scenario, right? That you've got less time,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Because that means you've written enough for 90 marks, right? Even attempting 90 marks at a
Hmm.
70% accuracy usually lands you in pass zone,
Hmm.
right? Uh, the other thing is the first suggestion for the first scenario where you are like where you say have what 4 minutes left and you've got a 10 marker left or 10 to
Hmm.
15
Hmm.
marker left, right? In those scenarios, what I would strongly recommend for to you is attempt at 10 marker in those last 3 to 4 minutes. Just randomly write all those high level points that you know, right? For example, points that
Hmm.
always work, right? Just
Okay,
writing those
yes. Mm,
blanket point, maybe a single sentence about each of them, that usually creates a lot of difference. Okay, because
okay. Mm,
r- again explaining the same thing in a previous question will maybe fetch you half a mark maximum,
mm, mm.
right?
Right.
But writing
Yes.
fresh points, maybe the same fresh points for a different question, means you can easily gain 3 to 4 marks in those 3 to 4 minutes.
Agreed. Yes. Okay.
Okay, so that's number one. Okay, number two for the second half, right? Where again you are like lost on content, right? I would like there are two types of questions, right? One are the types of first is the kind where you it's directly from text. It's you have a lot of info. Maybe you've written sufficient information in those answers as well.
Mm,
Maybe
mm,
go back to them, add a couple of points everywhere, right? Because you points would be in abundance there. You would be able to write a couple of more points, right? It would just
mm,
safeguard that if you've missed maybe half a mark, 1 mark in a couple of questions, you are even picking up those marks. The second
mm.
is those technical questions, right? Where just like because of like there are at times, right, in exams you have a brain fade sort of scenario, right? So just maybe
Yeah,
go back.
and sometimes I think questions are, I feel there was a question wherein they
Hmm.
asked what to do after performing an experience analysis, labs
Hmm.
experience analysis. And the question specifically stated that you do not have to mention steps you can take to improve your labs experience. But the
Right.
steps that you will carry out after your experience
Hmm.
analysis tells
Hmm.
you that the experience was worse. So that
Right.
was very confusing as to what I can add. It was, I think, 4 or 5 markers. So 2, 3 points you
Yeah.
can write that check if your analysis is correct, etc. But
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
else can you write for a 4 marker? Sometimes questions are
Hmm.
very like this because you cannot generate points there.
Agreed. Agreed. So in such scenarios, just try to like there are a few points that always work, right? Just try to bring in those points. Yeah. It's like given that you're working on Word, copy paste always helps you, right? So just copy
Mhm.
and paste those classic points everywhere. Yeah.
Okay. Mm.
Yeah. That's number one, right? The other one is right. Um, like try to like what really helped me was when I was giving these papers was trying to put myself in the shoes of that actually it's one of those things that you already do when you are writing an answer, right? Somewhat subconsciously, but um, need to do it in a more conscious way. I think that helps more.
Mm.
Okay,
Okay.
so
Yes.
right, try to like think yourself that you are in that position. Sorry, and what you would exactly do, right? I think that that really helps more, like many a times when you are blocked for points.
Okay.
Okay,
Mm.
cool.
Actually, if we have a few minutes, can we please discuss the last question of this paper only? Because I was
uh
also doing the same paper today, and it's very generic and just
I
very confusing.
already have another call that I have to move to, and already late for that. Can I, your exams are on what, 17th, right? If I'm not
17th,
wrong.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Can I keep something for either Thursday or Friday and we can take these up? Anything else?
Works.
Yeah,
Cool.
works.
Works. Cool. I'll drop a message on the group depending on like these times work for you all, right? Uh
Mhm.
yeah. Anything after 9 works for everyone?
Yeah, yes.
Cool. So
Yes.
I'll come keep something on similar times.